Hello, moviegoers. I'm George Roush, and I'm here with the director, writer, and writer-producer of The Devil Inside, which is currently playing at AMC theaters. Thanks for showing up, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you quickly, what was the writing process like for this film, and where did you come up with the idea for it?
Well, originally we came up with the idea, we saw an article that was about the fact that the Vatican started a school for exorcism. And this was about 2005. And when we looked into that, it was like pretty cool because people like us could go to the school, not just priests and nuns. And as we learned more about what they were teaching, you know, we kind of said this would make a pretty amazing film to kind of see a side to exorcism and possession we'd never seen before in a film, like the clinical side and what they did and why they did it, you know, why priests do what they do in an exorcism and the signs of possession. And so we wrote a script. And in Hollywood, you know, typical way, it kind of went back and forth in development for a while. And then a friend of ours, our partner, Morris Paulson, he was like, look, you know, let's make this outside the studio system. And I can finance the movie, you know, he said, not me. And we'll do this film documentary style if you guys are interested in reinventing it that way. Mm-hmm. And so then we just buried ourselves in crime documentaries and stuff. And
so initially the project was not a found
it was
footage.
a traditional film.
It was just a traditional.
Okay. Yeah, and then we saw like an avenue to reinvent it sort of as a documentary style film, and it kind of thinned out the storyline, but then also brought the characters up a lot. You know,
is that a big pressure when you're doing a movie like this, because there are so many horror films that focus on exorcism? So what do you do to make this one stand out from the rest?
I think, well, we did a lot of interviews and research with priests and exorcists, and we try to find things that we haven't seen in other exorcism films. And so there are a couple of elements. Certainly Brett mentioned the scientific element. There's also things like demonic transference and multiple demonic possession, which we focus on a lot in this movie. So we just try to show people elements that we think they haven't seen before.
Okay, but what was the most difficult process in this as far as wanting to make it a found footage type of film? Because it's been done for so long. Were there any concerns about that, or did you just want to go ahead, full steam ahead with it?
Well, initially, when we conceived it as this found footage style, or really it's kind of a documentary style film that spirals out of control, you know, because the first half of the film is very much we call it like a semi-professional documentary, you know,
right.
like a guy that's trying to make a pretty good documentary, but he's, you know, not a complete professional, and he's there to make a cool film and document all this stuff. But at that point, things like Paranormal Activity, The Last Exorcism, all those films didn't exist at all. And actually, we were in pre-production. The only, you know, it was more, I think, Blair Witch we were inspired by. We hadn't seen something quite like that in quite a while.
And also a lot of the true crime docs, like Paradise Lost, things like The Staircase, because the first half of the film kind of follows that kind of storyline and that kind of vibe. So. And
then when we started to look into the documentary aspect of it, and we said, all right, we're going to do this, we were in pre-production, and somebody was like, hey, have you seen this Paranormal Activity film? And we're like, well, that's kind of in the same realm. We're like, is that going to hurt our movie? And then it became a big success. And then people started kind of saying, hey, you know, what are you guys doing over there with your film? And we said, we just want to go to Europe and make it, and come back with as good a film as we can.
Right.
And so we weren't really trying to copy or get on a bandwagon. It was before that bandwagon started. And since it was an independent film, it takes a long time to finish and then sell and then release an independent film. And in that time, these other films have come out.
Yeah, right. So while that was happening, we just put our head down to finish our movie. And that was kind of it.
The roles for these actors are very, very physical. Yeah. How much of this was on page, and how much of it was them improvising, them being possessed?
Well, everything was in the script, but, you know, somebody like Bonnie Morgan, who plays Rosa, the girl who's possessed in the basement,
right?
She has very special talents that she can do, and everything she did, there was no visual effects involved. It was all in camera, and so. But I didn't know, and we didn't know until we rehearsed with her, like, exactly what can you do? So while it was in the script, generally speaking, because we were basing it on, like, real exorcism stories, it wasn't until she could show us, oh, I can do this and this, and we kind of choreographed the most horrific way for her to kind of play her character. Mm-hmm. So.
Was it difficult for you in framing these shots and making it to where the documentary filmmaker is able to show the audience exactly what is going on, you know, without losing the intensity of the scene?
Well, there were two things we did, I think. One, for the big exorcism scenes, you know, they're documenting this kind of from a scientific perspective. So there are cameras mounted for certain scientific reasons, which allowed us to edit the scenes in maybe a more theatrical way, you know?
Right.
And then likewise, you know, this guy's there to get the shot, like I said. So he's trying to get in the middle of the action. Which I think is, what was the other thing I was going to say? I don't know, I was going to say something else first.
That's all right. Talk to me about the locations, actually, and where you guys scouted, and the whole thing centered on the Vatican. You had to be there, right? You didn't want to fake it.
Yeah, we went there for about a week and ran around guerrilla style, shooting a bunch of stuff. But then we shot in Bucharest, Romania, for about 3 weeks, and that place is great because the crews there are great, and it's a pretty beautiful city, very gothic, and it doubles great for Rome. So we did a lot of the interiors and some exteriors there, but then went to Rome to really, grab most of the stuff you see.
Right. Viral marketing is a big thing now with a lot of film. You've got the Rossi Files, which kind of expand on the story behind this. How deep into that did you get into production? Was that later on, or was that early on in the process?
Very late. Yeah. Very late in the process. It was an idea that came up right towards the end, and it's kind of an experimental thing, and we don't quite know how it's going to work out yet. Right. But all the footage that you see on there is footage from the film that either didn't make it into the film or we shot when we did pickup shots, and then we have a lot more. So it's kind of, in a way, to us, an extension of the story, and it's also maybe the kind of things you would see maybe on DVD extras, but we're seeing it much earlier. And so Paramount's really good at kind of being loose and doing things on the fly. And so as we see the reaction to that website, we have more and more content that we'll put onto it and continue the story further and further, as to like what actually happens at the end of the movie. Right. Because right now, one thing you'll notice is the end of the movie, it's a kind of a bold choice what we did, and it was a pretty conscious effort, and we want to try to do something different. But there is more to the story that I think that website will probably continue to tell, and even as early as like today,
Yeah, I think with the ending of the film, it's going to be something that people don't expect, and we try to be very authentic with the movie and the storyline, and sometimes in real life, things don't always play out in a perfect 3-act structure like they do in film. So, and to try to create a level of reality, we kind of went against the grain with that.
Now, we asked AMC moviegoers what their favorite possession film was, film about possession. So I want to ask you what your favorite is.
Definitely, both of our favorites would be The Exorcist. Yeah, absolutely.
I must be the only guy that chose Child's Play then, because I always thought,
yeah, it's pretty creepy.
Good choice. It's a good choice.
The Exorcist, and why?
Because it also, I think it in its time, it was completely groundbreaking. It did things that we can't even do now, as far as the graphic nature of certain things they said and did. And to do that in 1973, or I think, is amazing,
Right.
And it dealt a lot with, a very much of a character story, of one girl and her possession. So, and in our case, we tried to make this a really personal documentary about this girl trying to find the truth out about her mother and getting caught up in something that ultimately leads to bad things. And I think The Exorcist kind of did the same thing with Karis and Max von Sydow's character.
Right. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys check out The Devil Inside. That's playing right now at your local AMC theater.